Priya Nandakumar came to Tucson, Arizona in the fall of 2019 on an F1 student visa. She was 26 years old, had completed a master's degree in biochemistry from the University of Hyderabad, and had been offered a research position in the Pharmaceutical Sciences Department at the University of Arizona. The position paid $31,000 a year, required 60-hour weeks during active research cycles, and was attached to a 2-year contract. It gave her legal status, a laboratory badge, and a desk in a shared office on the third floor of the Skaggs Pharmaceutical Sciences building. It did not give her a path to permanent residency. When the contract ended in March 2022, she had 3 options: leave the United States, find an employer willing to sponsor an H-1B petition within the narrow window before her grace period expired, or marry an American citizen. The first was a professional retreat she was not prepared to accept. The second had been explored and failed. The department had no budget for sponsorship, and 2 outside applications had not moved forward. The third was a transaction. She approached it as one. Garrett Wolf was 38 years old and had lived in Tucson his entire adult life. He had worked for 7 years as a swimming coach at a public high school in the Rincon Heights area before leaving to start Aquaflow Services in 2016, a pool maintenance and repair company that by 2022 employed 6 full-time workers and 2 part-time contractors, and serviced roughly 200 residential and commercial clients across the east side of the city. His house on Mesquite Trail was modest, well-maintained, and paid off. His neighbors described him as quiet, punctual, and unremarkable. He mowed his lawn on Saturday mornings. He did not host gatherings. He drove a 2019 Ford F-250 with Aquaflow decals on both doors and kept it clean. He had been married once before, to a woman named Sandra Coyle, whom he had met through a mutual friend in 2015, and married in 2016. Sandra left in 2018 and relocated to Portland. No public explanation was ever given, and Garrett did not discuss it with co-workers or neighbors. He had no criminal record, no history of substance abuse, and no outstanding debts. Devika Suresh was 29 and had arrived in Tucson 2 years before Priya on a similar research visa. She worked in the same department, shared a lab bench with Priya on 3 joint projects, and had become the closest thing Priya had to a trusted contact in the United States. She was methodical, private, and cautious, in the way people become cautious when they understand that their legal status is contingent on the goodwill of institutions that do not know them personally. Marcus Teal was 44, broad-shouldered, and had worked for Aquaflow since the company's first year of operation. He handled the larger commercial accounts, drove the second company truck, and had signed as a witness on a document he described later as something Garrett had asked him to do without much explanation. He had not read it carefully. He trusted Garrett. Cheryl Baum had managed Aquaflow's administrative accounts part-time for 3 years. She processed invoices, tracked expenses, and maintained the payroll. She was organized and observant in the way that people who handle other people's money tend to become. She noticed discrepancies before they became problems, and she filed things. Laurel Voss was 31 and had worked for Aquaflow as a part-time administrative contractor from January through July 2022. Her contract was not renewed. She lived in an apartment on North Oracle Road, had no criminal history, and had processed company files, shared drive documents, and expense records during her 7 months at Aquaflow. She left quietly. No reason for the non-renewal was documented in the company records. Joel Ferris was an immigration attorney based in Tucson who had handled visa and residency petitions for 12 years. He was precise, methodical, and known in his field for thorough preliminary case reviews before taking on clients. Priya contacted him for the first time on October 12, 2022. Detective Leon Burr had worked homicide for the Tucson Police Department for 14 years. He was 51, operated without a partner by preference and by the department's current staffing structure, and had a reputation among colleagues for moving slowly and being right. He was assigned the case on the afternoon of October 17, 2022. The arrangement between Priya Nandakumar and Garrett Wolf was initiated through a website called Path to Stay, a visa marriage agency that operated in a legal gray area by connecting foreign nationals with American citizens willing to enter into legitimate marriages for compensation. Priya created a listing in April 2022, Garrett responded within a week. They met twice at a Panera Bread on East Broadway Boulevard before either of them committed to anything. The meetings were transactional by design. Priya had prepared a written summary of the arrangement's terms before the first meeting and brought a printed copy to the second. Garrett read it at the table, asked 2 questions about the payment schedule, and said he was willing to proceed. The agreement was drafted by Priya and signed by both parties in late April 2022. Its terms were specific. Garrett would receive $4,000 upon signing as an upfront deposit. The remaining $10,000 would be paid upon official approval of Priya's green card application. They would live in Garrett's house on Mesquite Trail in separate bedrooms, split utility costs proportionally, and present themselves as a genuine couple at any USCIS interviews or requests for documentation. There was no clause governing personal conduct beyond what was necessary to maintain the appearance of a valid marriage. 2 witnesses signed: Devika Suresh, who had been told the full nature of the arrangement, and Marcus Teal, who had not. Garrett stored a scanned copy of the signed document on the Aquaflow Company shared drive, in a folder labeled with his initials and the year. He did not password protect the folder. The wedding took place on June 3, 2022, at the Pima County Courthouse. The officiant was a county clerk named Rosario Fuentes. No guests attended. Fuentes processed 47 marriages that month and had no reason to remember this one. Priya moved into the guest bedroom of the Mesquite Trail house on June 10th. The joint USCIS petition was submitted on June 20th. The 90-day conditional residency clock began. For the first 6 weeks, the arrangement functioned as written. Priya left the house before 7 each morning and returned between 9 and 11 at night. Garrett ran his routes, managed his crews, and was rarely home before 6. They passed each other in the kitchen, confirmed schedules for the 2 USCIS preparation sessions Joel Ferris had not yet been retained to assist with, and otherwise maintained the separation the agreement implied without needing to enforce it explicitly. The first deviation was small. In late July, Garrett installed a Ring doorbell camera on the front entrance of the house. He told Priya it was for security. He configured the app on his own phone and did not share access. When Priya asked about it 2 days later, he said the camera was his property, and the decision was his to make. Priya noted the exchange in a document she had begun keeping on her laptop: dated entries, factual language. She did not yet consider it a problem. By August, the pattern had shifted enough that she was recording it systematically. Garrett had begun intercepting her mail from the box before she collected it, setting it on the kitchen counter already opened. He had started asking where she had been on evenings when she returned later than expected. He asked once who Devika was, despite having met her at the agreement signing. On August 14th, Priya wrote in her notes, "G asked again about my schedule. Tone different from before, not friendly." On August 27th, noticed my laptop had been moved from where I left it on the desk. Could not confirm but suspect it was accessed. She forwarded these entries to Devika via an encrypted messaging application. She did not contact a lawyer. In September, Garrett withdrew $6,000 in cash from the Aquaflow business account in 2 transactions, $3,000 on September 10th and $3,000 on September 24th. No corresponding expense was logged. Cheryl Baum noted the discrepancy in the account summary she maintained and asked Garrett about it once. He told her it was a personal matter. She did not press further, but she kept the record. On September 3rd, Priya had written in her notes, "He told me the agreement could be voided if I was not cooperative. I don't know what that means legally." It was the first time Garrett had referenced the agreement as a leverage instrument rather than a mutual commitment. Priya read that entry twice before forwarding it to Devika and then closed the laptop and went back to the lab. In early October 2022, the financial structure of the arrangement collapsed. Garrett Wolf contacted Priya and requested the remaining $10,000 from the original agreement ahead of the agreed schedule. He cited unexpected business expenses at Aquaflow without providing documentation or specifics. Priya refused. The agreement was explicit. Payment was contingent on green card approval, not on Garrett's operational needs. She referenced the signed document by date and clause. Garrett did not respond to that message. What he did instead was contact USCIS directly. The inquiry was made through the agency's general information line and logged in the system on October 7th. Garrett did not file a formal report of marriage fraud. He requested information about the process for doing so. The distinction was legally significant but practically narrow. The inquiry created a notation on the joint petition file that would be visible to any attorney conducting a preliminary case review. Priya did not know about it until October 12th, when she contacted Joel Ferris for the first time. Ferris ran a standard preliminary check on the petition status before agreeing to take the case. He found the notation immediately and called Priya the same afternoon. He told her what it meant, advised her to document every interaction with Garrett going forward, and told her to avoid direct confrontation. He said he would begin preparing a response to any formal complaint if one materialized. By October 15th, Garrett had stopped responding to Priya's calls and text messages entirely. She logged the blackout in her notes file with the date and time of each unanswered attempt. She sent a final message on the evening of October 15th, stating that she had retained an attorney and that any further communications regarding the agreement should go through Joel Ferris. Garrett did not reply. What Priya did not know, and what would only become clear weeks later through the investigation, was that Garrett's behavior during this period was not solely a response to the broken payment negotiation. He was managing a second pressure that had been running parallel to the arrangement since August, and that he had told no one about. The $6,000 withdrawn from the Aquaflow account in September had not gone toward business expenses. It had gone to Laurel Voss. On the morning of October 17, 2022, a Pima County reservoir maintenance worker named Dale Pritchard arrived at the Silver Bell Lake Recreation Area on the northwest edge of Tucson to conduct a routine inspection of the drainage infrastructure. The lake was artificial, formed by a retention basin constructed in the 1980s, and was used for catch-and-release fishing and walking paths. Pritchard was checking the eastern drain grate at the concrete embankment when he saw something beneath the surface, approximately 4 feet down. The water was calm. He used a flashlight. He called 911 at 6:48 in the morning. Tucson Police Department divers recovered the body at 8:15 a.m. The deceased was male, fully clothed in jeans, a gray Aquaflow polo shirt, and work boots with the laces still tied. There were no immediately visible surface wounds. A 2019 Ford F-250 pickup truck with Aquaflow Services decals on both doors was found in the parking lot of the recreation area. The driver's door was unlocked. The keys were on the front seat. A phone with a cracked screen was on the passenger seat. The vehicle was registered to Garrett Wolf, age 38, of Mesquite Trail, Tucson. The body was transported to the Pima County office of the medical examiner. Dr. Constance Rhee conducted the autopsy and issued her preliminary findings on October 19th. Cause of death was drowning. Secondary finding was blunt force trauma to the posterior skull, consistent with a single strike from a flat, heavy object. The trauma had occurred before submersion. Bruising patterns and fluid in the cranial cavity indicated an interval of several minutes between the blow and death by drowning. Time of death was estimated between 9 p.m. and midnight on October 16th. Detective Leon Burr was assigned the case on the afternoon of October 17th. He drove to Silver Bell Lake at 2 p.m. and walked the perimeter of the parking lot and the embankment path for 40 minutes before speaking to any of the officers on scene. He observed the layout of the lot, the sight lines from the embankment to the water, the condition of the gravel path, and the position of a single surveillance camera mounted on a utility pole near the restroom block at the lot's eastern edge. He noted that the camera was angled toward the parking area and submitted a formal request for its footage before leaving the site. The footage was transferred to Burr's workstation the following morning, October 18th. The camera was rated for daylight operation and performed poorly after dark. The image was grainy and low contrast, but the parking lot's entry lane was partially legible. At 9:22 p.m. on October 16th, a light-colored sedan entered the lot and stopped near the embankment path access point. The vehicle remained stationary for 11 minutes. At 9:33 p.m., it exited. No second vehicle was visible entering or exiting during that window. Garrett Wolf's Ford F-250 appeared in the lot at 9:41 p.m., already parked and stationary, which indicated it had arrived before the camera's motion detection cycle had last reset, meaning Garrett had been at the location before 9:22, before the sedan arrived, or the truck had been driven there by someone else after his death. The partial license plate on the sedan was legible in two frames, Arizona registration beginning with the letters BPK. Burr noted all of this, saved the relevant frames, and said nothing to anyone for the remainder of that day. Detective Leon Burr drove to Aquaflow Services on East 22nd Street on the morning of October 18th and spent 3 hours interviewing Marcus Teal and Cheryl Baum separately in the company break room, with a voice recorder on the table. He began with Teal. Marcus Teal said that Garrett had called him on the evening of October 15th and asked him to come into the office the following day to go over the company's financial records. Garrett had used the phrase, sorting something out. He had sounded tense, but not frightened. Teal arrived at Aquaflow on October 16th at noon. Garrett was not there. Teal waited 2 hours, assumed Garrett had been held up on a service call, and went home. He did not call again that day because, as he told Burr, Garrett sometimes went silent when something was weighing on him, and calling repeatedly made it worse. He had not known Garrett was dead until the police contacted him the morning of October 17th. Cheryl Baum had prepared before Burr arrived. She had printed a 4-page summary of Aquaflow's account activity for September and October, organized by date. She placed it on the break room table without being asked. She directed Burr's attention to 2 cash withdrawals from the business operating account, $3,000 on September 10th and $3,000 on September 24th. No expense entry corresponded to either withdrawal in the company's bookkeeping system. She had asked Garrett about it once in late September. He had told her it was a personal matter and had not elaborated. She had flagged it internally and done nothing further because it was his company and his account. Burr took the printed records, thanked her, and gave no indication of what he intended to do with them. The partial plate BPK was run through the Arizona Motor Vehicle Division database that afternoon. It returned 3 registered vehicles in Pima County, matching the plate fragment and the vehicle class visible in the surveillance footage. The first belonged to a retired schoolteacher named Warren Goff, who had been in Phoenix from October 15th through October 18th, attending a family event, confirmed by hotel check-in records, and a credit card transaction at a Phoenix restaurant on the evening of October 16th. The second vehicle had been reported stolen in August and had not been recovered. The third was a 2017 Honda Civic, light silver, registered to Laurel Voss, age 31, address on North Oracle Road, Tucson. Burr ran her name through the criminal database and found no record. He then ran her name through Aquaflow's contractor documentation, which Cheryl Baum had provided as part of the company's personnel file summary. Laurel Voss had worked for Aquaflow as a part-time administrative contractor from January through July 2022. Her contract had not been renewed. No reason for the non-renewal was documented. Burr did not contact Laurel Voss immediately. He spent October 19th reviewing the phone records he had subpoenaed from Garrett Wolf's carrier, using the cracked phone found on the passenger seat of the F-250. The phone itself had sustained damage to its display and front casing, but had been recovered by the department's digital forensics unit. Partial message content was accessible. What Burr could read showed a series of exchanges with a number not saved under any contact name, beginning in early September and continuing through October 14th. The messages were fragmented. Some had been deleted from Garrett's end before the phone was damaged, but the pattern was legible enough to establish that the contact had been initiated by the unknown number, not by Garrett, and that the tone of Garrett's responses shifted from cautious to compliant over the course of the exchange. Burr requested a voluntary interview with Laurel Voss on October 20th. She arrived at the Tucson Police Department on East Pennington Street at the agreed time, without an attorney, dressed carefully, and answered every question with a measured precision that Burr later described in his case notes as rehearsed without being scripted. She confirmed she had been at Silver Bell Lake on the evening of October 16th. She said she went there regularly to think that the walking path along the north embankment was familiar to her, and that she had parked briefly before deciding it was too dark to walk comfortably. She said she had not seen Garrett Wolf or his truck. When Burr referenced the surveillance footage and the 9:22 p.m. timestamp, She paused for 2 seconds before answering. She said she had not noticed another vehicle in the lot. She said she had left after approximately 10 minutes and driven home. Burr thanked her and did not indicate that her plate had been identified. He submitted a warrant application for her full phone records before she had left the building's parking lot. The warrant was approved on October 21st. That same afternoon, with Laurel Voss's verbal consent obtained during the interview, a department vehicle was used to photograph the interior and accessible exterior of her 2017 Honda Civic, which she had driven to the station. The trunk contained a red toolkit, a zippered case with foam inserts holding a set of hand tools. The kit was a Snap-on branded set. 3 of the foam inserts were occupied. One insert, sized for a large crescent wrench, was empty. The indentation in the foam was clean and undistorted, consistent with an object that had been regularly stored there and recently removed. Burr photographed every insert individually, logged the kit as a documented item in the case file, and did not yet apply for a seizure warrant. He needed the phone records first. The 41 messages between Laurel Voss and Garrett Wolfe, read in sequence and in full, constructed a timeline that made the cash withdrawals Cheryl Baum had flagged immediately legible. The first message from Voss's number arrived on September 8th at 11:14 a.m. It did not open with a threat. It opened with a statement. She knew about the arrangement with Priya Nandakumar, she knew about the signed agreement, and she knew what federal marriage fraud statutes carried in terms of criminal exposure. The second message, sent 4 minutes later, contained a figure, $5,000. The third message, sent that evening, reduced the figure to $3,000 and added a deadline of 72 hours. Garrett's first response came the following morning. He asked how she had found out. Voss did not answer directly in any subsequent message. What she said on September 10th at 8:47 a.m. was that it did not matter how she knew, and that the deadline still applied. Garrett withdrew $3,000 in cash from the Aquaflow account at a Bank of America branch on East Broadway Boulevard at 2:15 p.m. that same day. A subpoena to Voss's personal bank account showed a cash deposit of $3,000 on September 11th. The interval between withdrawal and deposit was less than 24 hours. The second payment followed the same structure. Voss messaged on September 22nd, used the word installment without irony, and set a 48-hour deadline. Garrett withdrew $3,000 on September 24th. Voss deposited $2,800 on September 25th. Total paid, $5,800. Burr called Joel Ferris on October 23rd. Ferris confirmed that the USCIS inquiry logged on October 7th under Garrett's name was not the first federal contact regarding the petition. An earlier tip had been made in August through a DHS fraud line from a prepaid mobile number. Burr's team traced the prepaid purchase to a Walgreens on North Oracle Road on July 29th, the same street where Laurel Voss lived. The store's security camera showed a woman matching Voss's description at the prepaid phone display at 4:38 p.m. that day. July 29th was 2 days before her contract at Aquaflow formally ended. The sequence was now complete. Voss had accessed the company's shared drive during her 7 months at Aquaflow and had found the scanned agreement stored in an unlocked folder. She had read it, understood its federal implications, purchased a prepaid phone 2 days before her last workday, and filed an anonymous tip. When no investigation materialized, she contacted Garrett directly from her registered number in September, a calculation that he had too much to lose to report her. Both payments confirmed she was right. On October 14th, Garrett sent his final message. He was done paying and understood his exposure better than he had in September. Voss responded 40 minutes later with 4 words and a time. Meet me or Monday. Monday was October 17th. The implication was a formal USCIS report at the start of the business week. Garrett called Marcus Teal on October 15th and asked him to come to the office the following day to review financial records. Burr believed Garrett had intended to document the extortion payments before any federal contact materialized. He did not make it to that meeting. He drove to Silverbell Lake on the evening of October 16th and did not leave the water. Priya Nandakumar was interviewed formally on October 24th with Joel Ferris present. She provided her dated notes file, her encrypted message logs with Devika Suresh, and her call records with Ferris. Her alibi for October 16th was confirmed by three independent sources. Her keycard registered at the Skaggs building at 8:47 p.m., a phone call to Devika Suresh from the lab at approximately 10:15 p.m., and a Circle K receipt timestamped 11:03 p.m. from a location 4 miles from Silver Bell Lake. She had not been at the lake. She had not known Laurel Voss existed before Burr said the name. Burr applied for an arrest warrant for Laurel Voss on October 25th. The application cited the phone records, the bank subpoena, the Walgreens footage, the empty wrench insert photographed in Voss's toolkit on October 21st, and the paint transfer from Dr. Constance Ree's supplementary forensic note, issued October 22nd. The transfer was described as consistent with a red-coated metal surface contacting Garrett Wolf's collar at the point of impact. The snap-on kit in Voss's trunk was red. The missing wrench had not been located. Laurel Voss was arrested on October 26, 2022, at her apartment on North Oracle Road at 7:14 a.m. She did not resist. She asked for an attorney before Burr had finished reading the charges. The arrest was recorded by Burr's body camera and by a surveillance camera mounted above the apartment building's main entrance. That footage was later entered into the trial record, not as direct evidence of the crime, but as documentation of her demeanor at the moment of custody. She was calm, her expression was flat, and she did not ask what the charges were based on. She already knew. The case went to trial in Pima County Superior Court in March 2023. The prosecution was handled by Assistant District Attorney Meredith Kales. The defense retained a private attorney named Douglas Pack, who built his strategy around two arguments: the absence of the murder weapon and the poor image quality of the parking lot surveillance footage. Pack argued that the paint transfer was circumstantial without the object that caused it, that the camera footage established presence at the location but not presence at the waterline, and that the 11-minute window between Voss's sedan leaving the lot at 9:33 p.m. and Garrett's truck appearing stationary at 9:41 p.m. was a reasonable interval for her to have departed before any contact occurred. He told the jury that the prosecution had built a case from financial records and assumptions and had not placed his client's hands on Garrett Wolf. Kales addressed the weapon gap with a witness Burr had located in early November during his canvass of Aquaflow employees. Jerome Wick, a service technician who had worked at Aquaflow for 2 years, testified that in June 2022, during a shared use of the company parking lot, he had seen Laurel Voss open her trunk to retrieve a folder. He had noticed a red-handled crescent wrench in the open toolkit because it was a professional-grade snap-on tool that seemed inconsistent with what an administrative contractor would carry. He had mentioned it to a coworker at the time as an odd detail. The wrench was documented in the kit. When the kit was photographed in October, it was gone. No purchase record, no disposal record, and no transfer of ownership had been found under Voss's name for that specific tool. The second critical piece of evidence came from a source Burr had identified during his November street canvass. A private residence on West Silver Bell Road, approximately 200 meters from the lake's northern access path, had a motion-activated camera mounted above the driveway. Its owner, a retired engineer named Harold Beam, had not come forward initially because he believed his camera angle was too oblique to capture anything useful. When Burr knocked on his door during the canvass, Beam mentioned the camera as an afterthought. The footage from the evening of October 16th showed, at 9:38 p.m., a figure moving quickly along the road shoulder away from the lake access path, carrying an object in the right hand. The object was indistinct. The figure's height, build, and jacket, a dark zip-up with a white drawstring visible at the hood, matched a jacket recovered from Laurel Voss's closet during the apartment search conducted on October 26th. The jacket was entered into evidence. Pack challenged the identification on the basis of image resolution. Kales presented a frame-by-frame analysis prepared by the department's digital forensics unit, alongside photographs of the recovered jacket. The comparison was submitted to the jury without further expert narration. The jury deliberated for 9 hours across 2 days. On March 14, 2023, they returned a verdict of guilty on both counts. Judge Patricia Wollaston sentenced Laurel Voss to life in prison without the possibility of parole. In her sentencing remarks, Wollaston cited the premeditated structure of the extortion, the deliberate escalation of financial pressure over 6 weeks, and the calculated use of another person's legal vulnerability as a mechanism for personal gain. She made no rhetorical additions to that description. The facts were sufficient. Garrett Wolf's company, Aquaflow Services, was dissolved in January 2023. Marcus Teal found work with a competing pool maintenance firm on the east side. Cheryl Baum returned to freelance bookkeeping. The house on Mesquite Trail was sold in February 2023 to a couple relocating from Phoenix who had no knowledge of its history. Priya Nandakumar's immigration case was handled separately from the criminal proceedings. Joel Ferris filed a petition under VAWA provisions extended to documented fraud victims in coercive domestic arrangements, arguing that Priya had been placed in an involuntary and increasingly dangerous situation as a direct consequence of Garrett's conduct within the arrangement. USCIS contested the petition for 11 months on the grounds that the original marriage had been entered into fraudulently by both parties. On February 7, 2024, the petition was approved following a supplementary review that weighted Priya's documented evidence of coercion and the criminal record of the extortion against her. She remained at the University of Arizona,